Over the past 9 days, we've watched a star run out of room to support itself, a planet cook its atmosphere past recovery, a bank collapse in hours, and the definition of death get redrawn. 9 thresholds, 9 points of no return. Nature doesn't negotiate. You can't build a mechanical safety net under a collapsing star or a runaway greenhouse effect. But the boundaries we build ourselves, our financial limits, our medical protocols, are different. We can design those with a deliberate margin for error. Take the stock market. After the 1987 Black Monday crash, regulators built a deliberate pause button into the system, financial circuit breakers. They were designed to temporarily halt all trading when prices dropped too fast, forcing a moment of reassessment instead of uninterrupted panic. This monitor displays the May 2010 flash crash, showing a sharp downward spike where the market plunged nearly 1,000 points in minutes. But during that free fall, the circuit breakers failed to trigger at all. The decline was severe, but it didn't hit the specific, outdated point thresholds fast enough to activate the system. That massive failure led directly to a total redesign in 2012 and 2013. Regulators abandoned the raw point system and shifted to track percentage drops instead. Our engineered safeguards are imperfect. They exist today only because older versions were tested by reality and failed. You can see the limits of these systems in this aerial view of the destroyed reactor buildings at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear plant. During the 2011 earthquake, every active reactor at this facility successfully engaged its SCRAM system. The emergency shutdown worked exactly as engineered, dropping control rods and stopping the fission chain reaction within seconds. The safeguard worked, but the disaster happened anyway. The tsunami that followed disabled the backup power required to cool the reactor's remaining decay heat. That was a secondary, entirely separate problem the shutdown mechanism was never built to solve on its own. A safety system doesn't guarantee survival. It just creates a brief window to reconsider a boundary before we cross it. Which brings us to a boundary our species crossed hundreds of thousands of years ago, with no margin for error and no record of it happening at all. 1 trillion words will be spoken on Earth today, but the very first word, the moment a human intentionally made a sound that meant something specific to someone else, left 0 physical trace. No fossils, no stone tablets, just a vibration absorbed into the air. The complete absence of evidence made the search for language's origin so frustrating that in 1866, the Linguistic Society of Paris formally banned all papers on the subject. They decided the question was completely unanswerable, and speculating about it was actively harming the credibility of their field. You can understand their frustration when you look at the theories being submitted. The society was flooded with ideas that later earned mocking nicknames: the bow wow theory, suggesting humans just mimicked animal noises, and the poo-poo theory, which argued speech grew directly out of instinctive gasps and cries. Even Charles Darwin had a favorite hypothesis, later dubbed the la-la theory. He suggested that spoken language evolved out of musical, courtship-related vocalizations, long before those sounds carried any literal, structured meaning. Because words don't fossilize, modern science had to stop looking for them directly. The search fractured. Paleoanthropologists started examining fossilized throats, neuroscientists analyzed brain wiring, and geneticists began reading ancient DNA. They were looking for the biological hardware required to speak. Anatomically, that means a lowered larynx and a horseshoe-shaped structure in the throat called the hyoid bone, which anchors the tongue. Genetically, it means tracking down specific DNA tied to speech production, like a gene variant known as FOXP2. Tracking that hardware led to a strange realization. Neanderthal skeletons carry similar hyoid bones, and their DNA contains the exact same FOXP2 gene variant that modern humans do. The physical capacity to produce complex sound was not entirely exclusive to our direct ancestors. Having the physical equipment built into your throat and brain is only half the equation. It doesn't explain when or why early humans finally decided to boot up the software of shared, complex communication. This timeline maps a 2025 MIT study. Tracking early human divergence, researchers concluded the biological capacity for complex language was present roughly 135,000 years ago. But researcher Ian Tattersall notes widespread symbolic behavior, like creating art, doesn't appear until 100,000 years ago. a massive 35,000-year lag. For tens of thousands of years, the biological equipment for speech sat dormant. Early, highly mobile populations might simply not have needed the dense, complex communication required by larger, settled groups. The capacity existed. The social pressure to use it did not. How early humans eventually crossed that gap is still heavily debated. The gestural theory suggests we communicated silently with flexible hand movements first, only switching to sound when environmental pressures, like the need to communicate in the dark or while using tools, forced a switch to vocalization. The vocal continuity theory takes a different angle. It argues there was never a hard wall between silence and language, but rather a slow, gradual escalation from the primate call systems our ancestors already used. We see echoes of this behavior in the wild today. Recent recordings show wild chimpanzees combining specific calls to shift their meaning, like issuing targeted predator alerts. It proves that combining sounds to communicate exists on a biological spectrum. Then there is the musical, or prosodic theory. When adults instinctively sing-song their words to infants, they rely on rhythm and pitch to convey emotion. Early human vocalizations likely carried this exact kind of instinctual, non-literal meaning long before they evolved into strict grammar. Science hasn't solved the mystery of the first word. Instead, it revealed a much stranger reality, a species walking the earth, biologically fully equipped to speak, waiting tens of thousands of years for the right reason to finally open its mouth. Every single one of the 7,000 languages spoken today is a direct descendant of that single, unrecoverable transition from silence to syntax. We can measure exactly when a financial market plunges. We can pinpoint the exact second a nuclear reactor halts a fission chain. But the single most consequential boundary we ever crossed left no data at all. Tomorrow, a new arc begins, the invention of us. Over the next 10 days, we'll explore how humans built the rest of our world, writing, law, money, and art. And unlike today, every one of those inventions left a physical artifact we can actually hold. Spoken language is the one foundational human invention where we only possess the aftermath. I'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you for sharing this moment of pure wonder. You are the true magic that fuels this journey. Until next time, remember to shine bright.